Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Sheriff, and I'm the Youth Film Festival's manager for the Forest City Film Festival. I'm so pleased to welcome you to the latest Youth Filmmaking 101 seminar. Today we'll be looking at careers in film with a specific focus on directing, and we've got some really special guests lined up for you today. Sean Cisterna is a multi-award-winning director whose latest film is the feature documentary, The Long Rider. He also directed From the Vine, starring Emmy winner Joe Pantoliano, and the acclaimed cancer drama, Kiss and Cry, which is currently streaming on Netflix. In 2017, Sean received a Canada 150 Citizenship Award from the federal government for his dedication to the arts. We also have two award-winning student filmmakers with us today. Willow van Rootselaar's short films, Compulsions and Walk On, topped the experimental category at the 2022 Forest City Youth Film Festival and earned her the Most Enterprising Filmmaker Award. Dexter Greene's short film, This Time Tomorrow, won the narrative category at the 2022 Forest City Youth Film Festival and earned him the Best Overall Film Award. Willow and Dexter had a chance to ask Sean a few questions in advance, and we assembled his answers into a short pre-recorded video that features a ton of great insights into directing as a career. The three filmmakers will be joining us after the video for a live Q&A session. So as you're watching, think about what questions you might like to ask them. Your teachers can post the questions in the live stream chat, and I'll be sure to pass them along. So, without further ado, let's roll the video.
Hello, Sean. Thanks for taking the time to answer these questions today. I'm Willow, and I received first and second place in the experimental category for two of my films, as well as the Most Enterprising Young Filmmaker Award at last year's Forest City Youth Film Festival. Did you go to school specifically for film? And if so, how important was this to your growth as a filmmaker?
And yes, I did. I went to York University. I didn't realize that film was necessarily an option for a career. When I was a kid. So to discover that there was a whole education system built around film and television and screenwriting, I just leapt at that opportunity when I discovered that was an option. So I went to school at York University. I studied film and screenwriting, film production and screenwriting, and I think I've definitely learned a lot more working in the industry, but film school definitely gave me the foundations needed to work confidently in the industry. And not only did it teach me the basic tools, even from the basics of how film cameras run at 24 frames a second in North America, to what mise-en-scène is and blocking and editing, kind of exposing students to all that great stuff early in their filmmaking careers. It not only did film school teach me that, but it was able to open my my network of colleagues that I was able to draw upon even after graduation. So there's still an editor from film school that I love working with, a cinematographer that I love working with, and it's amazing how those 4 years of film school kind of unite you, and you can kind of support and lean on each other for support in the as you kind of develop into a working filmmaker. So to be able to draw from those resources and their talents is really inspiring.
Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for taking time to answer some of my questions. My name's Dexter Greene, and I'm a writer and director here in London. And last year, my film won Best Overall Film and Best Narrative Film at the Forest City Youth Film Festival. I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your answers. My first question I wanted to ask you was, I was wondering if you had long-term creative goals when you were younger, and if so, how did you fulfill those goals?
I don't know if I necessarily had long-term goals. I was just focusing on survival, to be honest, where the next job was going to come, and can I support myself in an industry that is so incredibly challenging. So I don't necessarily think I had long-term goals, other than I had that one passion project in my on my desk that I always wanted to make. And so having that vision, I guess, that allows a project to kind of come to fruition. The more, those times spent early in your career, you're basically assembling a future team, perhaps that you can use towards your passion project if you are so called to make one. I think early in my career I was focusing on joining organizations that also helped me in my career. So I joined the Directors Guild of Canada, I joined the Producers Roundtable of Ontario, I did networking at different film festivals, and I just, even online, your online community is a great resource as well to bounce ideas off of, whether it be on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Sharing ideas in a social setting is also, you kind of feed off the energy of the filmmaking community in Ontario. And I think what's great about working in a smaller city like London is that your crew is your community, and I think that's a really beautiful thing, to be able to count on people and nurture people as they grow in their respective disciplines, and to utilize each other's skills on each other's projects. I think that's a really special communal way of making films.
How do you decide on the visual style and aesthetics of your films? Okay,
so how do you choose a visual style or aesthetic for your film? Number one, it comes from the script, like first and foremost. So if you read a script and you notice the writer has incorporated certain themes, that theme will help determine the overall look and feel of the script. So, for example, I'm working on a script right now that has to do with borders, for example, like borders between countries. And so the theme of that film visually will be, how do you represent borders in a film? So through my blocking, I'm going to give obstacles for the lead character to step over on occasion, maybe film them through fences or some sort of barrier in between the camera and the subject, so that theme of borders and being able to cross borders freely is reflected visually in the film. So I always let the film sort of guide me. As my next film is also a road trip that takes place from throughout North America all the way to South America, I could use that theme in the creation of a soundtrack, for example. So perhaps as the characters travel from North America to South America, the soundtrack takes on the persona of the country that we're in. So, what is shot in Canada might sound totally different than what is shot in say, Bolivia, for example. Something that is inherently North American would not sound great in a scene set in Bolivia. So I think it's important to read the script through that creative thematic lens and make every decision you can to be your sort of North Star, your guidance towards the visual and auditory creation of your film.
Second question was, I was wondering if you were inspired by any other types of art in your film, and if so, which mediums?
I think in film you definitely have to be, because we're talking about a visual medium that is essentially moving photography that incorporates sound and movement and choreography. Basically, having actors blocking actors from within your shot is essentially choreography. It's like dance. And then, of course, there's the production design and painting and music. All these artistic elements blend seamlessly into the making of a film and help create that enriching experience. But yes, during prep, I'll definitely pull images from the world of art and share that with my cinematographers so that they're able to replicate a mood or a feeling or even a composition that I really love. And it's fun to pay homage to those works from those classic works and put these little Easter eggs in your project that may not necessarily make sense in the in the scene, but when a viewer is able to pick up the reference, it's a pretty fun way of incorporating your love of painting and art into your films. I think it's the medium of filmmaking allows for incorporating all those different disciplines into your project, and it's just a matter of what inspires you and how you want to pay homage to those works that you're passionate about in your own work.
What do you think is the most important skill for a director to have, and how did you personally develop that skill?
So I'm on the set of a new movie now that I'm directing, and I think why I get invited back to direct projects is that I can make quick decisions. So a director is like you might want to consider a director like a purveyor of taste. So you'll feel all the department heads kind of come to you and ask questions about where the camera's placed and what's in the frame and whatnot. And through the director, you have to kind of answer them in such a way that it reflects the theme of the film. So you're managing your time well. You are thinking like a production designer or an editor, and you're able to translate the script or embody the script in every creative decision that you make. So if there's a theme in the film about let's say transparency, say that's a theme in the film, every question asked of you as a director should relate back to that theme of, say, transparency, for example. So if a wardrobe artist comes up to you and shows you two raincoats, one that's blue and one that's see-through, you might want to choose the transparent one because it links back to the theme of the film. So to think of every creative decision that you make that will be reflected on camera should kind of link back to that theme in the film. And I also think that one of the biggest skills I have as a director is that I was also an editor. I love importing footage and looking at rough cuts and cutting together my own version of scenes in tandem with the editor to kind of get a sense of how the film is flowing from shot to shot. So the more you can think creatively and use that inspiration of the theme of the film through every creative decision you make, and couple that with your knowledge of how shots kind of cut together, and you can really create a dynamic and winning project that will help you get hired again and again.
For my next question, I was wondering how important you think it is to create a good environment on set, and I was also wondering, how do you create that environment?
So this is something that I've strived my entire career to do. I tend to be very calm on set and treat people with the utmost of respect and thank everybody at the end of the day for their efforts. On occasion, when it's a special day, I'll bring coffee or donuts for the crew. And I think that's an important way to get the crew on your side and create that warm family environment. We all work together, and the crew looks to the director for leadership. And I have heard many stories of directors losing their temper on set and just not treating the crew with anything other than respect. So I knew when I ever got my chance to direct, I would not be that person because, we are in a very small community in the Ontario filmmaking world, and everybody talks to each other. So you really want to work hard to foster that reputation that will follow you for the rest of your life. So for me, it's very important to be a director that listens and understands and respects actors and incorporates the ideas of everybody on set, so that it does feel like a communal experience that we're all giving our ideas and contributing ideas to the creation of a project. I think the crew really appreciates that, and sometimes their ideas are better than yours. So you have to be humble about it and do what's best for the film.
How do you ensure that the tone and mood of your films stays consistent throughout the production process?
That's a great question. I think being clear up front in prep, in the development of the project and with your key collaborators, explaining what the tone and feel should be and showing your key collaborators and cast references. That really helps kind of nail down the tone of the film, so that on day one, when you film that first scene, you're already striving towards something. You're not like figuring it out on set, but you're trying, you're kind of implementing that work done in prep, so that everything remains consistent. And I think that by keeping in close contact with your key creatives throughout every decision, every setup of the camera, you are ensuring the tone and feel of the film is consistent. Your actors will help you too. If you're working with professional actors, they know that in scene 7 and in scene 77 shot later that day, they have to have a consistent feel to them. And I think you can lean a lot on the actors that you've chosen to help maintain that consistent feel. And certainly, if there's an aesthetic that you want to imbue in your film, like say you have maybe a wide landscape sort of theme going on in your film, your cinematographer can help frame up images that reflect back to your initial vision, so that tone is always there when you're making the film. It's done through lighting as well. Maybe there's if your tone and aesthetic for a comedy wouldn't be the same for a thriller, right? The lighting would be totally different. So even those creative choices lend to the overall consistency of the look of the film.
For my next question, I was wondering how you approach working with non-actors or first-time actors in a film.
I think the best way to answer that is I would probably not choose an overly dramatic film for a non-actor. I think it's, I probably would lean on like something like Italian neorealism, in the 1940s, when Italy was decimated after the war. Their whole movement in film was all about using non-actors in existing locations, using like a lot of natural light. And so that was essentially what working with non-actors was their whole oeuvre of filmmaking, was working with non-actors. And so I think it can be done. I think just the dialogue-heavy intensity of the films that come out today might not be suitable for non-actors, but if you can find the right project that contains the right amount of dialogue with the right amount of blocking and reactionary shots, might be a little bit more suited to the talents of a non-actor or an early career actor.
How do you approach editing, and what role does it play in your filmmaking process?
I am a big prep junkie. I love to shot list everything before I get to set, so that the entire crew is aware of what we're shooting every single day. And I don't mind sharing my director's shot list, so that the crew on the day can work towards picking off each shot on my list and helping me feel really satisfied at the end of a shooting day that I got everything I needed. So I think doing all that homework and prep and not showing up unprepared on the day will help you get the footage, the editing chunks that you need to make a compelling scene. What I've started to do in my most recent films is something called match cutting. So I love to end a scene in a manner that links to the next scene that may take place, several days later, or just has a similar kind of shape or style or action. So it's a creative way of transitioning between scenes that is not cutting to your standard establishing shot. So, for example, I remember in one scene I had a character in a garden, for example, and it was a community garden scene, and there was a kid, and I had the kid throw up a tomato in one shot, and the camera panned up to the tomato, and as it fell down, we cut to the kitchen in which that tomato fell into the scene to start on a kind of a chopping board, and the chef kind of cut it in half. So it was a really fun and creative way to transition between two scenes that it wasn't necessarily an establisher. So I love to use the tools of editing and montage to create dynamism in a shot or a scene.
And for my final question, I was wondering if you find watching other films as an inspiration while you're working on something, or if it's more of a deterrence while you're working on a new project.
Definitely have a steady diet of films that I absorb as often as I can. I do love drawing from cinema history in my own personal work. I'll steal shots from other films that I've seen or certain edits I'll steal even, and put my own spin on it, of course, in context to the theme of our film that we're currently working on. But no, there's always references in films that I love to incorporate. So I think subjecting yourself to films not only from Canada, where we make films, and the United States, of course, that everybody kind of looks at as marketable content, but I love watching films from Europe and Korea, and it's really exciting to see how filmmakers in other cultures are using the camera and telling stories in through their respective lenses. So we are very lucky today in the age of streaming to have so much content at our fingertips, and to be able to share our stories with the world, and vice versa, have them share their stories with us. So I think, working in a visual medium like film, it's important to stay up to date and be inspired by the films and filmmakers that have come before us.
Hey Sean, it's Mike. I just thought I'd get a quick question in while I have the chance. How important would you say that film festivals are to an up-and-coming director's professional development? Thanks.
I probably wouldn't be a working filmmaker today if I didn't have film festivals, to be honest. I made that first film on a credit card, and without it going to different festivals and winning some awards, I couldn't have brought that to a broadcaster and have them, and a distributor, have them acquire it. So I needed those laurels and those awards to show, to kind of prove to a buyer or a distributor that the film was worthy to be released in the marketplace. And because my first film did well on the festival circuit, it just propelled the next one forward. And the cycle kind of has been continuing for the past, 15 years since I made my first film. So yes, film festivals are insanely important. You go to them when you have the opportunity. I've met so many people and generated so many projects based on attending festivals and networking. And it's just it's a wonderful pick-me-up as well. Like if you're in the middle of February, for example, in Toronto or London, wherever you happen to be watching this from, to travel to a different film festival out probably in California or Europe, it's just an amazing feeling to get out of the city and share those collective experiences with the current filmmaking community and learn from each other and generate projects. One thing I love about festivals is that there's always a networking component, and I'm able to generate these co-productions that I spoke about earlier. I found a colleague in Brazil, for example, that I'm generating a project with, and to do a Canada-Brazil co-production, and that just kind of allows us to both raise money in our respective countries and pool it together for the project. So attending festivals is key to the long-term development of your career.
And here we are, back live and with Sean, Willow, and Dexter. Hi, how are you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Well,
Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for accepting the invite. I really appreciate the time and the effort that you put into the the pre-recorded segment, and thanks for volunteering your time to join us for this live Q&A. This is great. I just wanted to say the last time I saw Willow and Dexter, you guys had like a mitt full of awards from the 2022 Forest City Youth Film Festival. So I just wanted to say congratulations again to the both of you for your fantastic success last year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No worries. So what I'd like to do now is I'm gonna kind of fade into the background so I can monitor the chat, and I'll let the three of you continue the discussion, the great discussion that you were having in the pre-recorded segment. But before I did that, I want to give us a bit of an icebreaker. I have a short excerpt so the students that are watching can see an example of the work that Dexter and Willow did last year. So Derek, our technical director in the back, if you can run that short clip, we'll get going with that.
Were you at the tracks again?
Make yourself some breakfast.
All right. Do you want to start it off with, I guess, what would you say your preferred style of filmmaking is? Do you have one in terms of experimental or fiction or narrative?
Yeah, I have been focused mostly on narrative filmmaking for the bulk of my career. It's just so happened to be my first love. I feel like I could be most creative with it. But I do love the challenge of working in documentary. I've focused on documentary for the last couple of years, specifically as certain funds from the Canada Media Fund have allowed more for documentary filmmakers to kind of make a living. So I tend to bounce around between narrative and documentary because I don't know. They're like athletes using different muscles, right? You can get too comfortable in narrative, and then need a bit of a challenge and work in documentary. And the reason why I like documentary is because there is no script. I mean, with narrative, you're kind of focused and you can kind of laser tune into what you have to do on any given day because there's a blueprint right there for you. But with documentary, you kind of use a different part of your brain and structure a story using footage that already pre-exists or that you can't really control the outcome of. So for those reasons, I love for both both styles of filmmaking.
I just had a question kind of generally about short filmmaking. I'm not sure if you had made short films when you were younger or anything like that as well, or even now, but I just wanted to ask you if you have any general advice on making short films for festivals like this, or just in general.
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing I hear, regardless, even if it's the most creative short on earth, is length. So festivals seem to really put an emphasis on length, like of 12 minutes or less. Even they love the shorter the better, because it means they can program more shorts into a block of films. So if you're going to make a film, just kind of use that as a guiding principle. Be as creative as you want within those 12 or less minutes. And other advice, you're competing against a large swath of filmmakers trying to break into the industry, so your short has to say something that stands out, or showcase something that stands out, whether it be a unique style of filmmaking, a unique theme, shots that you might not have seen in a film before, something gimmicky, and you have to use your creativity to highlight what those are, but the originality kind of will allow your film to rise above a competitor's film at a festival.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question that's coming in. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Totally. I am the voice from the deep. So one of the students that's watching is asking, how did all of you get into directing? Like, Willow, did you want to start with that?
Sure. So I kind of got into the world of film. I started off doing a broadcasting class in high school, which kind of sort of phased me into the world of film and working with a camera. And then that kind of really picked off over quarantine when I started to learn editing. So I started to teach myself After Effects to find creative ways to use like the artistic qualities of film. So I'd say that really took off my sort of start into the world of film.
Oh, great. So instead of getting into bread making really heavily during quarantine, you chose to expand your skill sets in filmmaking.
Editing.
Excellent choice. Dexter, how about you?
Mine was kind of all over the place. I'd always been interested in films and movies since I was really, really young. But my parents, I really wanted to watch The Shining, and my parents wouldn't let me. So I decided I would just make my own version of it. And I got a couple friends together and filmed like a 15-minute version of The Shining and just made it for myself. And then they let me watch it after I made that. So that kind of just got the ball rolling, and I kept going from there.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think I'm going to pull from Dexter's page as well. So I was a young kid and fell in love with The Exorcist when I was in like grade 8. And it's a film where every facet of filmmaking is used to its highest potential. Like there's no the sound was entirely kind of created. You can't create you have to create a demon voice from scratch. Production design, the set was refrigerated. So like as a young kid learning all these interesting behind the scenes stories of how they made that film, that really opened my eyes as to how many people are involved in a creative decision on a film set, and that's kind of sparked my love of filmmaking, trying to figure out and decipher how they achieve the special effects, and just kind of being voracious as a young in grade 8, trying to figure out how they made these special effects happen in films.
Oh, that's great. Oh, thanks for sharing that. Just a reminder, any of the students out there watching, if you want to toss your questions into the chat, I'll make sure to pass them along. So thanks for that question. And Willow and Dexter, I'll pass it back to you for your next questions.
Sure.
I guess kind of bouncing off of that, do you have one movie that you go back to for inspiration, or one that kind of you've really found to be your favorite?
It's that's the hardest question for
I know.
so, No, it's like different phases of my life had different important films. Like when I was really young, it was E.T. To fall in love with a piece of rubber. Basically, that's when I knew the power of film. E.T. was just a puppet, basically that was Spielberg projected all this humanity onto, and so I realized pretty early on the power of film. Then in high school, I fell in love with a Clockwork Orange, Stanley Kubrick's film, and learned all about composition and lighting and how that related to character. And then when I got into university, it was like Citizen Kane and even the French New Wave. There's a Francois Truffaut film called The 400 Blows that just kind of used minimalism and non-professional actors to kind of create their aesthetic in film. So honestly, every 5 or 10 years, I'll have a new favorite form of inspiration and kind of use that as a guiding post. And then every time I make a film, like whatever the genre is, like I went to Italy to make a film, so I studied Italian neorealism of the 40s and kind of had a steady diet of those films before I made that film in Italy, just to kind of pay tribute to the forefathers of Italian cinema. And so sometimes I let my projects kind of dictate the philosophical or aesthetic approach to making it.
Thank
Awesome. I had a question kind of more specific about short filmmaking. Or just filmmaking in general, how do you approach shooting outdoors differently than you approach shooting indoors? Like what do you do differently to prepare to make that as best as you possibly can?
Number one, it's location scouting. So I'll always look for a unique location that isn't necessarily filled with modern things like signage. Like I hate seeing Subway in the background or McDonald's or any sort of street signs. So location scouting is the number one thing that I kind of spend a lot of time on in prep to make sure that our exterior locations look great. And it's incorporating a lot of foreground elements. So while it may be a nice, gorgeous landscape shot, I like a bit of foreground in the shot to kind of give a sense of depth to the subject in the background. And that sometimes involves bringing in elements and peppering it into the frame. So we have an art department that brings in shrubbery or greens or grasses that we can kind of shoot through and complement the frame. But no, and then for modern sort of looks like offices, I like a lot of reflections. So shooting through glass into an area, and then choosing the most aesthetic location possible. But it all depends on the theme as well. Like if your theme of your film is whatever, like you kind of let the theme of the film decide the aesthetic of the location.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And here's Mike again. I have another question. This one's from a teacher. The question is, as a director, what are your thoughts on the popularity of remakes? Is there a problem when the art interpretation already exists? Sean, did you want to take a stab at that one?
It's not something I've necessarily done yet. I mean, I've adapted books, and I guess, it's not really a remake, but it's reinterpreting someone else's work. Right. I think that's more of a US thing where, the bigger filmmakers can kind of, a studio has no original ideas and wants to just capitalize on something that's already popular. But no, it's I think you can use an original source material like a book to kind of influence your filmmaking, because it's taking one form and adapting it into a cinematic language. So there are an infinite number of creative possibilities for that. But if you're specifically talking about remakes, I don't have a problem with them. I just feel like they're lazy because the fact that there are so many original ideas out there, but no financier wants to take a gamble on creating something original.
Right, right. Yeah. Just a quick follow-up to that. Says, by the way, one of my students, Carly, absolutely loves Full Out. She watches it religiously every week.
Thank you very much, Carly. That's lovely to hear. Yeah, Full Out was a gymnastics film we made for Netflix that starred Jennifer Beals from Flashdance, and it was a remarkable opportunity to work with a bunch of U.S. gymnasts that went to the Olympics basically, and work at that caliber and watch them up close. Gymnastics is a sport that is pretty mesmerizing to behold if you're kind of up close to it. So I have nothing but admiration and respect for those tremendous athletes.
Yeah. So Derek and Willow, back to you if you want to crack on with your great questions.
Sure. So, do you have any advice that you would give to young aspiring filmmakers who are looking to get into the industry?
Advice for filmmakers. Yeah, I mean, film is definitely a visual medium, and you often have to, or everybody thinks you have to kind of wait for permission to tell your story. Someone's got to say yes to kind of green light it. But if you can kind of change your thinking and use, your camera or your phone as a tool to just make your ideas kind of come to life in the most economical way, people see through. Can see past your budget limitations if the story is great. So I early in my career, I was always waiting, filling out grant applications, hoping that someone would say yes, and kind of using that as a crutch to just not go into making my film right away. But if your ideas can be scaled down and you can use the tools available at your disposal with some like-minded friends or family who's willing to help you out, then there is no need to wait for permission. You can just take the tools available to you and go out and create something magical and special to help you get on the map and launch your career. So my advice would be not to wait and to incorporate the things that you have in your community that make it special or grandiose, that sort of thing.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to ask you a question, sort of about like post-production. How do you use score in your films, and how do you use music? Do you think that you could make a film without music and it could still be good, or how do you put an importance on music in your films?
I love to treat music as a theme or a character in a film, almost like this movie I did behind me called The Long Rider. It's the story of this Felipe Leite. He's a young aspiring journalist who is kind of asked to leave Canada when his permanent residency lapses and rides a pair of horses from Canada to Brazil. It's a remarkable true story that happened in 2012. And so I used that. I wanted to use music as a character. So music at the beginning of the film is very kind of North American sounding. And then as he progresses south into Mexico and Honduras and Nicaragua and all the way down to Brazil, the music sort of changes, and we incorporate the national instrument of the country that Felipe finds himself in. So the music slowly morphs from this North American sounding style of music to a more Latin and Brazilian feel as we move south. So even music can be a character in a film and help convey a journey or emotion.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So did you face any challenges when starting out your career in the film industry? And if so, how did you overcome these?
Honestly, the hardest challenge was getting people to kind of take notice, and it's very daunting when you're trying to make a film, like a feature film, but no one wants to support you. I think it's a little bit easier today with the advancements of technology and the fact that there are multiple financing opportunities for first-time filmmakers through Telefilm Canada. There's a talent to watch program where young filmmakers are able to get up to like $200,000 or $300,000 to make their own film. But that program didn't exist, 15 years ago when I was making my first feature. So I had to kind of finance it myself using a small grant and then a couple of credit cards. But I only made the film at an amount that I knew I could sell it for afterwards to kind of recoup. So we made this film called Moon Point. We used professional actors, and it was a road trip sort of comedy, but just made it a budget enough that I knew that the movie network would buy it for. And so to go to get their commitment on board at the script stage, I could kind of use that letter of intent as a tool to kind of max out my credit card and know what I could spend on the making of the film. So the terrible thing is that, we're all artists and we're all really passionate, but you have to be a business person at the same time. And that's kind of like the balance that I struggled with off the top when no one would, when no one was as passionate as I was about making my own film. Now, after multiple films, I have producers attached to projects, and they can handle the financing for me. But and I can focus more on the creative. But in those first early days, it was like you had to wear multiple hats and be a financier and a creative at the same time.
I was wondering, you've mentioned research a lot when you're talking about your films and stuff like that. How do you know when to stop researching and get started on your film? How do you kind of self-regulate yourself to not go overboard with research and still get your film made?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you become like I don't want to say an expert, but knowledgeable on the subject, and you know what point you're trying to make in the production of your film, and you can kind of use your research and I guess your teachings that you've acquired along the way, when you can kind of think in that sort of mindset and have your thoughts and decisions be influenced by what you've already learned, I think then that's when you're ready. I mean, you could be learning from now until the end of your life and not have the the energy to move forward. But if you you put an maybe you put in a number of hours that make you feel comfortable, that you have enough knowledge to make creative decisions moving forward, I think that's when you're ready.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, since you've kind of gone around in different locations in the world to shoot these films, do you have a location in particular that you enjoyed shooting in the most? I
definitely loved Italy. Italy was a remarkable country to shoot in because anywhere you point the camera is a stunning backdrop, even naturally or architecturally. There's these beautiful rolling landscapes that seem to go on endlessly, and that creates a nice visual depth when you place characters in the frame. But there's also these, non-modern looking, examples of architecture like cathedrals and city cobblestone streets that just add so much texture into a shot. So it was very easy to point a camera and make it look gorgeous. So you save a lot in production design, which I really liked. We didn't have to construct a false looking version of what it was like to be in Italy when you can bring your camera and just kind of set it down, light it, and start shooting. So but then last week I just got back from Havana, Cuba, and it was similar. I mean, it was a lot more run down, I'd say, than Italy is, but still a gorgeous city to shoot in, and had that texture, that warm sky, the green foliage and landscape around mixed with the water. It was just a lovely place to shoot.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of piggybacking off of Willow's question, you mentioned new wave and different film movements and stuff like that. Do you have a favorite film movement or period of filmmaking that you're most inspired by or just enjoy the most?
Yeah, I think it's just I love the films of the American New Wave of the 70s. I think that's when the filmmakers were most auspicious and bold. They would kind of learn the rules of filmmaking and then break them on purpose in order to, say something new and exciting in American cinema. So I always think that's like the gold standard of filmmaking. That's like The Godfather, the films of, a lot of films by Kubrick and Scorsese started his career in the 70s. And so it's just like this bold new wave of filmmakers using cameras in unique ways, breaking rules, and getting away from, Hollywood sets and getting out onto the streets and making films. It felt real and gritty and exciting, something that hadn't been seen in cinema before.
Thank you.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
I just have another student question, if I could slip one in here. Sure. The student asks, do you have any tips on how you create a large-scale feel or feel to works that have a minimal budget or minimal resources?
Yeah. Again, I think it comes down to location. So imagine you have a very wide lens and you want to just kind of steal from the films of like Sergio Leone, like his spaghetti westerns. They use these extreme wide lenses and bring characters up close to the camera, almost like a distorted feel, but you see this vast landscape behind you. And that's basically a free shot. A wide vista is a free sort of production design that makes it look really big. And if you can frame characters around these large vistas, that kind of gives it an epic quality to it. It's obviously a little bit more difficult in Ontario if you can't define those landscapes, but there are definitely creative ways in which you can take a camera and bring it somewhere, and you may know cool locations that haven't been showcased on film before, especially in the London area where there's less buildings that we have here in Toronto. It's using locations to your advantage for the most part, I'd say.
Oh, great. And just one other quick question. Another student just popped a question in the chat. In your opinion, what makes a good film plot? I'll open that up to anyone that wants to take a stab at that.
Yeah, you guys go now.
Willow, Dexter, do you want to take what's your idea of a good film plot? What makes a good film plot?
I always like to think of something like if I look at a film I really like, I always try and think if something has like a distinguishable item or something that happens in the movie that you can always look back at and associate that thing with that movie. I always think that that's a good sign of a good film. But I also think something like Sean, you were saying earlier, just something original that seems totally different from other things, while still getting an important story across. I think originality in weird, oddball stories, I think, are sort of coming into the wider landscape of filmmaking now and getting more popular. And so I think that is what makes a good film plot, like originality and something that comes from your heart that nobody else has, nobody else could think of.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Dexter, on that one. I think, just anything. You see more and more now directors like Wes Anderson getting these super detailed but kind of oddly metaphorical movies out there. And I think originality is a really big part of it. I also really think that character development and characters' relations to the plot, I find really helps drive plots in movies and TV.
I also think that about the question in general too, I think putting less pressure on plot as a whole and just letting yourself make something is something that like I struggled with when I was starting to make things as well. But if you look at the films of like watch movies, that's always something to do. But if you watch films from like Richard Linklater or Eric Rohmer, who I've been watching a lot lately, these are movies that aren't necessarily about big things or about anything specific. Nothing crazy always happens in the movie. You can still make a great film without having a crazy plot. And sometimes those are the best films.
And I think that I love seeing characters who are, appear one way. I love seeing characters overcome great obstacles in a film. I think that's kind of important to show how something is so unsurmountable, but our hero character has to overcome that impossible task in order to, achieve some sort of catharsis. I think that's also what makes a great film plot. It allows you to root for that character and be invested in the film and their journey.
100%.
Great answers, yeah. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. It looks like we've probably got about just enough time for one more question from each of you, for Derek and Dexter and Willow. If you want to throw one more question at Sean, and that should probably take us pretty close to our 11:30 stop time.
In terms of equipment, do you have a camera or a piece of equipment that you favor when making your films?
In terms of camera, I think the gold standard is the Aeroflex Alexa. That seems to be the camera that a lot of my cinematographers put as their number one camera on their rental list, with a nice series of prime lenses. So it allows you to capture the most cinematic image possible in the widest number of focal lengths and looks for your film. And you can kind of use lenses as a way to tell a story as well. So, if you have a romance, for example, you might want to start your two characters on lenses that don't necessarily have that depth in the background. But as their relationship progresses, the depth becomes a little more shallow, and you can kind of sense that they're in their world just together. And so, yeah, you kind of use equipment as a way to tell the story as well.
I have a tough question. How when you were younger, did you get yourself taken seriously by other people watching your films or hearing about you wanting to make films?
Yeah. So what I did was when I made my first film, I went to festivals and tried to meet as many people as possible. That worked a little bit. We got some nice reviews and got our film out there. But for subsequent films, every time I went to a festival, I asked to sit on a panel or get out in the community and give a lecture at a school, for example. And so I think the festivals that I went to kind of responded to that, and that's not just in Ontario; that's everywhere. I did that in Russia. I did that in Germany. I'd asked the programmers of the festival to allow me to sit on a panel, and that not only allows you to, you're not only screening your film at the festival, but you're also in the program delegate list speaking on a panel, and you kind of become like an expert for those people in the audience, and it just allows your kind of network to grow. And then once you're on a couple of panels, you just bring that to the next festival and say, I was in Germany sitting on a panel for this topic here. Maybe for this festival or market, I could volunteer my time to do that as well. So it's thinking about how you can position yourself as a speaker in the industry as well. So the international scene kind of gets to know you as a filmmaker / speaker or advocate for film, and that's a way to kind of grow your potential in the industry just outside of being a filmmaker.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question.
That's great. Yeah, so many great questions and great answers in today's seminar. I just want to thank all three of you on behalf of everyone that's watching. That was really interesting. Lots of great takeaways, lots of great insights. And I want to thank everyone who's watching for tuning in. We have these ongoing seminar series. We've got a couple more coming up this month. So this has been great. I also want to remind everyone that's watching that we're now taking submissions for the 5th annual Forest City Youth Film Festival and the 2nd annual Ontario Youth Film Festival. You can learn all about the film categories and the competition rules by visiting fcff.ca/submissions or oiff.ca. You can also visit each festival's page on Film Freeway. Simply go to filmfreeway.com, click on Browse Festivals, and then enter Forest City Youth Film Festival or Ontario Youth Film Festival in the search box. Be sure to follow both festivals on our social media channels and stay up to date with the latest news, seminar announcements, and other exciting filmmaking events. But that's all we have for today. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Now go out and film something amazing. Thanks.